All right. So basically, for today's class, we are going to look at parameter violations. Okay. So we are basically gonna take a close look at how we can control what kind of data is what is being sent to our APIs. All right. We're gonna see how we can manage that or control that. Okay. So that irrelevant information don't get sent to the API. And that's what we're going to look at in today's class. So quickly, as usual, I'll just navigate to our project folder, open it up in VS Code, and then we kickstart our server. Also, like I said, I could be doing these things before the class, but then I intentionally don't want to do that. So I want to keep doing this for every class, so it just stays with us. So, and I don't think that there's anyone that is on this call that is not familiar with this process. So this process has been repeated for as many times as possible. And so I don't think it should be a complicated process. So our project folder is in my desktop, right? And we have the CodeCamp for beginner, and then within this main folder we have our project folder, which in this case we have project one and we have project two. So, and we'll keep working with our project one till wherever we are done with that. So we keep working with project one. So quickly, I will spin this up. I will turn on my environment so we could have access to fast API that has been installed. Okay, so I'll quickly do the cd into that and then venv environment name. Just cd into main. All right, so this is where we left off in our previous class. So we'll just pick it up from here and just continue. Right. So in our last class, we looked at query path and request body parameters, and we saw how this how we can do what actually pass this information down to our API and then process it and give out the appropriate response body. So in this class, we're going to look at, going to pick up from here and going to look at violations of these things, validations of these information or of this data. And we're going to kickstart with the path parameter. So before now, we have a path parameter. So I'll just pick up one of our path parameter that we have already, and I'll just edit it and then work with it. So this is our one of our path parameter of our path parameter that we had in our previous class. And we said that basically path parameters are what are information that lives within the route itself. Okay. So they're actually being attached to the endpoints themselves. Right. So it creates room for additional information where we could do what pass in that information via the endpoint, and then this information can be extracted from the URL itself and then processed, and the appropriate response for it is being sent. So that's basically what path parameter is. Okay. So we have this, right? We had this name student's name here being what being a path parameter. So basically, a path parameter are variables that live within curly braces in your endpoint, right? So they are parameters they are variables, right, that lives within curly braces in your endpoint in your route. Okay. So now here, and what we have here simply tells us that what that at some point after your domain name, that there is a room where we can pass in a student name, right? And the student name we do not know because we cannot actually control what is actually coming in there. So now, but then whatever has been typed in there as student name can do what can be captured from the URL and then can be processed. All right. So I will just re-edit this and then I'll probably just call this student name, okay, as it is. But then I'll go up there and comment on the other student name. So that the one we have down there can do what can actually execute. Right. So we will just bring the student name out and then put it at the end. So you put this man right back there and there. All right, so let's go ahead and navigate to this endpoint again, and I'm sure that we will still get the same information we had or the same response body we had in our previous class. So quickly, we'll navigate to this. But before that, I'll put on our server using UVCon. What is this? UVCon. So for me, I have to specify a different port, and I believe that we already know that with the port conflict on my device. So this will spin up our server for us, and then we can do what we can simply navigate down there. So skip this. So within our or among our endpoints, we have an endpoint that says that we can go to what to forward slash about me forward slash what student name. So if you try navigating to forward slash about me without specifying a student's name, then we should do what we should get the appropriate error, right? Saying that that something is missing, or sorry, not something is missing, but then that this endpoint does not exist because in our in our list of endpoints, we don't have an endpoint that stops at about me, right? So the similar one we have actually have something after that. So when we try to navigate to this, then we should have an an error saying what that particular endpoint is not found. Okay, but then we have a similar endpoint, but then after the about me, we are expected that we can provide a student name, right? And in this case, I could just probably just specify a student name, a barrier. So I can simply just come here and then put in a barrier there as student's name. And then when we get to that, then we simply do what? We simply get the appropriate response body, right? Saying the about information concerning what? A berry. Now, this value there is what is being derived from where? From this value there, right? So making that what a part parameter, all right? So and also making that point to be dynamic. It means that we can actually pass in any information there. So we can even pass in number as well. Let's say 120, and that will still work, and that will still work, right? And that will still work. Okay, but then this is the problem that we are actually facing, right? Because in this case here, one can do one can actually pass in what a wrong value, which in this case is a number. But then within our endpoint, within what we are expecting a string a string value, right? A string value that may actually have a minimum length of 3, because I'm not sure that someone's name has 2 characters. At least I think the lowest I've seen is 3. Like Ada is ADA, that's 3, right? So I believe that people's names should have a minimum of 3 characters. So those could be some few variations that we can actually make, or that we can actually put into place, which we can actually do this manually, right? We can actually go back to our endpoint. We can actually go back to our endpoint and right and put in a check here, right, to check that the student name is of a class string and has what a minimum character of 3. We can do that, right? But then that will be us messing up the entire code when there are simpler ways of doing this. When there are simpler ways of doing this, so we can put in a few lines of code and what and fast API will carry out that validation for us, right? And that is what we're gonna do right now. Okay, so using this endpoint, okay, we're gonna do what carry out some validation, right? So first of all, we expect that whatever is being passed in here should be what an a string value, right? Not an integer or any other type of value, but then it must be what? It must be a string, because of course someone's name must be a string. Okay, someone's name must actually be a string. Okay, so now what we can do, okay, is we can actually make use of type hinting, right? Type hinting. And type hinting is basically in Python, it is more is what we did in our previous class, where we can specify a variable, and then we specify the expected value of that variable. But what I want us to keep in mind is that type hinting does not actually alter the way your code works. All right. It only adds additional information to that variable. All right. So now to totally type hint, all right, we simply do what? We specify the variable followed by a colon, and then followed by what? The type that of that of that variable, and which is what we do, and which is what we did there, right, in our previous class. So this thing that we did here is basically type hinting in Python, and then it does not alter the way your code should work, right? But then when we actually make use of type hinting in Fast API, it works differently. So Fast API actually makes use of type hinting for validation, right? So now if I come back to our endpoint here, and the student's name here being what? A path parameter, right? If I simply provide a type hint for this student, for that variable called student's name, by putting a colon followed by what? A type, right? A native type, which in this case could be what? String, right? Now in Python, that is type hinting, but then Fast API will use this for what? For validation. So what happens is that once we type in a value as student's name, Fast API will cross-check if that value matches what? This type, right? So if it belongs to the class of string, if it doesn't actually belong to that class, then Fast API will automatically render an error, right? An appropriate error, letting the user know that the expected value there is what is should be of integer, sorry, should be of string and not of what? Any other type. Okay, and with that, we can just put a very simple variation there, right? So that's the simplest variation that we can actually do, all right? In Fast API, that is the simplest of it all. Okay, so we simply do what? We simply type hint, right? And Fast API will do what? We carry out that variation for us. Now, if we go back, okay, again, and then we try to access these endpoints, and then we specify the appropriate value. Probably we put a name here, so we put a berry again, a parent name, and then we send a request, right? That actually went through because we got the appropriate response body. Now, but then when we try to put in 120 as we did earlier, then this should actually do what? Throw an error for us, right? This should actually throw an error for us. And now, one more thing again is that one more thing is that Python that they what we call type conversion, automatic type conversion. So what happens is this. What happened is this. Okay, when Python when we pass a data, right, and then Python can automatically convert that data to appropriate data type. Okay, then that will actually happen automatically, except otherwise. So a typical example, a typical example could be a situation where a situation where we do where we can actually add a value, let's say 10 plus 12.5, all right, by default. Okay, or naturally this should not actually happen, all right, or this addition should not work because one is what? Is an integer, and one is what? Is a float. It is a float, right? Two different data types. But then Python will automatically convert one so that it matches the other type, and then carry out the calculation, right? That it does this if that is actually possible, right? If you can actually do that. But in a situation where we have something like this 10 plus hello, then 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 in this case, even if Python will try to do what to convert this, there's no way you can add 10 to hello, right? That will not actually work. But in a situation where we can also have 10 plus this, then Python can carry out this variation here for you, all right, if possible, if you can, all right, if you actually can. So now what's happening here is this. Now the student's name that we actually passed in as 120, all right, is actually an integer. But what happens is that Python will automatically quote it. All right. So being that we are expecting a string there, all right. So Python will do what will automatically quote it. So that should actually go through. Okay. And then if we try to actually see the type of student name, we will see that it belongs to the class of string and not an integer. So that's what happened there, and that's why we not see the appropriate error or the expected error. But in a situation where we are expecting probably student age, I think in this case, student age, and then we now type hints that student age should be an integer, right? So this should be student age, not student name again. Right, in this situation here, right? And then if we go back again and then we try the 120 again, of course, 120 should actually go through because 121 is an integer. But then when we try to put in a berry again, then this gives us what the expected error. So in this case, Python must have tried to do what to see how you can convert a berry to integer, and there's no way. So it had no other option than to show you that the expected error, saying that the input should be a valid integer. So it was unable to pass this, right? It was unable to do what to actually carry out this conversion automatically. So that is the simplest method that we can actually pass to for our parameter. Right? So we can actually do the same thing for query parameter as well. So in a case of query parameter, okay, and then probably we could also have a route like this, all right? A route that looks like this. But before then, how do we declare query parameter? How do we declare query parameter? Probably we have a route like this, okay? A route that says items, for instance. Very simple route. But then we also want this route to be expecting query parameter. How do we declare query parameter? How do we declare query parameter? Anyone? Anyone? Query parameter.
It will be in the function.
In the function itself. Perfect. So that's how we actually declare a query parameter. So a query parameter is basically variables that live within your route function, all right? Within your route function parameters. Okay, so now assuming this is our function here, okay, this is our route function, and then I specify maybe 2 or 3 parameters, all right, and then probably a comma b comma c. A b c there becomes what your query parameter. So it means that when we try to access the endpoint items, then it will expect us to do what, to pass to what a query parameter for a b and c. That's how we do what that's how we actually declare query parameters. Okay, so I'll just put a simple one here. So I'll put in size. So assuming I'm expecting size from here, so I will just this should be items info, and then within this items info, I basically want to show us the size, okay, the size of the item. So now if we go back again and then we navigate to this uh, to items, then we have the expected error saying the item is expecting query, size as a query parameter, and to define a query parameter. So that query parameters are those values or are those additional information that comes after a question mark in your URL. So I put in my question mark there, followed by what the query name, which in this case was size, and then I'll specify what the values. So in this case, I could say 10. And this will now work, right? That actually works. I can also specify a barrier here, and this will do what this will still work. But in this case, in real sense, we don't expect size to be what, a string. So we expect size to be what, an integer. So in that case, we can go back to our we can go back to our endpoint, and then we do what we simply type hint. So we type hint what the parameter itself. So I come and then I put my colon, and then I specify what the type. In this case, integer. And then what happens is that fast API will do what we cross check, or we'll make sure that what that the data provided is what matches what this type. So if you go back again and then we try to access this URL with a beret as size, then we get the appropriate or the expected error saying what that the input must be what must be an integer, must be a valid integer, right? So that means have to come back here and then we specify a valid integer, in this case 10. And then that actually went through. Do we have question? Question? Question. So we also did the same thing in our request body. So what we're actually doing here is doing what is typecasting. So it's type hinting, and then what happens that pandenti we use this type hint to do what to cross check that whatever is being sent in the JSON body matches what these expected types, right? These expected types. Question before we proceed. Question. Question. All right. So the silence means no question. Okay. So let's proceed. Okay, so apart from specifying the types or the expected data type, we can also have other validations, right? So we can also add other validations. But then the problem here is that when if we intend to add more than one validation, then we have to find a way of doing of wrapping all these things, all right, and then letting it be known to fast API that all this validation, right, belongs to what to this particular parameter, and all this other one belongs to what to this particular parameter. And then we also know that these parameters can be of different types, right? They can be of query parameter or what path parameter. So now we need to find a way of doing what of explicitly letting fast API know that what that this particular parameter must be a query parameter or a path parameter, and then it must do what it must also carry all these validations. Okay, and to do that, it's quite simple, right? It's quite simple. So now to do that, we can do what we can actually import their built-in functions for each of these parameters. We have query, we have path, we have body, we have orders, all right, available. Now they are built-in function. Now we can actually do what we can actually invoke this function and do what within this function we pass all our validations, right? We pass in all our validations, and then we do what we can now assign this validation to what to a specific parameter. So, so first of all, we need to bring in these functions. So in this case, I'll bring in I'll move from I'll bring in body, and sorry, not body. I'll bring in path. So now the path function is actually located in the same directory where you import your fast API. So where you have from fast API import fast API, in that same directory you also have all these other functions like the path, the body, and the rest of them. So we can simply do what we simply put a comma and then list the rest of them out that we want. Which in this case I'll bring in path and I will bring in query, right? So these are built-in functions, right? They are built-in functions. So what you could simply do is invoke this function, and then within this function, you can pass it as we can pass it uh, uh, as a type to what to a specific to a specific parameter. So going down again to our route. So we have that this first one here, this first route here, right, is what is a route containing what a path parameter, and this one here, right, is also a route containing a query parameter. And at the moment, each of these has a very simple validation where we specify a parameter with a specific type. All right. So here we simply say that what the student age must be what an integer and size must also be what an integer. Okay. So in a situation where we wanted to do what to add additional information, right? Or additional variation, then we need a situation where we can do what wrap all this variation within one specific function, and then you know what we pass it down to this man here. So in that case, I could simply come here and then I can put a comma, right? And then put in my, since this is a path parameter, then what I need to do is to invoke the path function here. So I simply put in my path here, and then within this function, I can specify other parameters. But then there is also a problem. There is also a problem again. The problem here is that we cannot specify these two things, right, to one single parameter like this. Like this will throw an error, right? This will throw an error. Now, but then what we can do is we can wrap these things up using a module, annotation module, okay, and then wrap them up together and pass it as one single argument towards to the parameter itself. Now, the annotation module does not alter your code. Please, this particular library does not change the way your code works. It does not alter it. It simply just wrap all this information and pass it as one single value, right? As one single value. So we have to bring in that annotation from a library called typing. So we simply just say from typing, we want to import annotate that man there, right? So this is the module that we want. This is the function that we want, okay? So we simply just copy this function and then after your colon, we simply just paste it there and then wrap this in a square bracket. Wrap this in a square bracket. And that is what we want to do. So in a situation where we intend to add other variations, all right, apart from type hinting, then what we can simply do is we bring in the annotate like a model, and then we wrap these things up. Okay, and then we wrap these things up. So now what fast API will see here is this, right? Once it gets to this point, it knows that this is what a path parameter, right? But then this path parameter must be what an integer. But then there are other variations, and that other variation is being what is being assigned with this path function. Please, you want to use path when you're dealing with path parameter, and use what query when dealing with query parameter. Okay, so that we don't get things complicated for ourselves, right? So that we don't get things complicated for ourselves. So now within this part function, so within this part function, we can specify other violations. So and then we could see that the moment you invoke this, we can see a lot of type hinting. All right, so this is more like type hinting now. So now this tells us that this part function can carry all these parameters. Like we have the max length, we have min length, and rest of them. So those are arguments that we can specify for what's for additional validation, right? For additional validation. So I will simply just come here and say, okay, that I want this to have a max length of maybe 10, and also we can specify as many validations as we want, right? As many as we want. So you can also have a mean length of maybe 3. All right. So please know that each of these arguments works differently. All right, pertaining to what to the expected data. So now if I'm saying that the path parameter should have a mean length and a max length. So it simply means that the expected information is what is supposed to be what a string, right? Because there's no way number can have a mean length now and max length. So length is more like size or character, right? So now when I say a mean length, I mean a mean character of 3 characters, right? So in that case, telling this man that he should get integer wouldn't actually help us here. right? So I have to change it to string. Sorry, to str string, and then just default it back to student name. So this should be student name. Same thing happens here, student name. Right, so that way we can do what we've actually provided three variations. One is that this must be what a string, and then it must have a minimum length, a minimum character of what of 3, and a maximum character of what of 10. So it means that in all you do, your name cannot be more than less than 3 characters or more than 10 characters. That's basically what it means. Right. So going back again to we go back to, let's say, the endpoint. Going back to the endpoint about me. So this should be about me. And then when we try to specify 120 again, then of course the first okay, so that actually the auto conversion happens there where the 120 but it is being put in quotes, right? It's being put in quotes. Right. So in a situation where we actually need to specify an actual name, say a berry again. Seems to be using a berry all through today. Then that actually went through. So that means that name has fit as much, or should I say, has passes all the variation. First of all, it's a string, and the characters there is not less than 3, and neither is it more than 10. But then if we change this to EB, then this should throw an error, right? Even if EB what is a string, there's no problem. But then EB also failed in what in being more than what 3 characters. So as such, this what the expected error is not shown, right? Stating that what that string should have at least 3 characters. It means that whatever we pass in there as a string must have a minimum of what of 3 characters. So going back again, we can just probably from EBE will do the trick. So that will actually go through. Do we understand? Do we understand? Question. Question. No question. All right. No question. So basically, that is how you will want to do what to pass validations towards to your parameter, to your path parameter. And in your spare time, you can look up all the arguments that the path function can do what can accept and how they do and how they work. So we have other argument like pattern. We have pattern. We have a lot of them here. If you could actually see the type hinting here, if you see the type hinting here, we have pattern, we have max length, which we already use, and the rest of them, and greater than, less than, and the rest of them, right? So, and the rest of them. So, in your spare time, you can actually take a look at the path function and see which other parameter it actually accepts, and which of these parameter will help in your course or in your specific task at hand. All right. So all these parameters is dependent on the task at hand. All right. It's dependent on the task at hand. So basically that is that for validation or for path parameters. And basically you basically do the same thing for query parameter. So if I was also expecting an integer, right, in this specific query parameter there, so I could just simply copy this, right? And since I'll be providing more than one validation, so as such, we need to wrap this up in annotate. And remember, this man here does not alter your code. It just helps you do what provide helps you wrap multiple metadata and pass the word as a single argument. All right. So now, in this case here, this is not a path parameter. This is a query parameter. So you have to change this to what to query parameter, and this should be int because size we are expecting size to be what to be int. And since we are expecting size to be an integer, the max length and min length will not actually do the trick here. Right. So we have other attributes, okay, that this query parameter or that this query function can do or can actually accept. We have the greater than. So greater than is GT, right? We also have GTE, right? That is GE, sorry, greater than or equals to, right? That's what this thing actually means. So let me just put it up there. We have GE. GE simply means greater than or equals to, right? And then we also have we have LE, and of course I believe you already know what that means, less than or equals to. We also have GT for greater than, and then we also have GE, LE, sorry, LT rather, for less than. Right, so those are basically some parameters that works with integer argument or with integer data. Now this can still be used within your path parameters, right? But then it wouldn't actually make sense, or should I say, there's no way of violating a string if a string is greater than or not greater than. Okay, so there's no way we can actually do that for a string. So as such, there was no point of us coming here to say GT should be equal to 3, because there's no way we can tell if a berry is less than or greater than what 3. All right. So we want to be careful or what to actually validate for, depending on what on the expected data, right? So that we don't actually specify a variation that can never pass, right? Because if I should come here now and specify GT should be equal to 3, this variation here can never pass, because there's no way we can actually verify if a string is greater than 3. Right. So we have to be careful as well when specifying all these validations. So I can still come here now, right? Since we are actually expecting an integer, so I could say that I'm expecting the size to be greater than 3, right? And probably could also be less than 1. So it means that probably the size is no that I think that is wait, that should be less than that should be greater than 3. I mean, greater than 1, but then it should be less than 3. Okay, so in this case, I'm expecting value, let's say 2, right? Because 2 is actually greater than 1, but also less than 1, 3. Okay, but also less than 3. But then if we left it the other way around, that variation will never change, because when you specify, let's say 3, right? In this case, 3 is not less than 1. So you see, even if it passes one variation, it always fails in the other variation. So we also need to know how to place these things, because if I come here and say here should be 3 and this other one here should be 1, right? If I pass in a value like, let's say 2, of course 2 is not greater than 3, but is not less than 1. So say that will always give us a problem. So we need to make sure that if you're intending on getting a range, all right, then they need to specify this range in a way that no matter what number that's been inserted there, that it passes these violations, all right. So for this case, we will leave it as it is. So going back to our browser again, and then I will specify a query parameter for the route items. So the size here is that if I leave it as it was with 10, then this should throw an expected error, right? Saying that this input must should be less than or equals to what 3. So in that case, I have to bring it down to what to 3, and that will actually go through. So as well will actually go through. Question. Question. Validation. Okay. The silence means no question. She means we. Miss Precious, your hand is up.
Good evening, sir.
What do you more?
So please, is it only string and integer that we can validate other data types we can, like boolean, true or false?
Yes, we can as well specify those expected data types. That will still work. Right. We can still say that we are expecting this input to be a list. There can also be a boolean, and that will still work. Okay, that will still work. So it's not just string and integer. We can also use other data types, and that will still work. Any other question? Any other question? All right. Okay, so let's look at body variation. Right. So let's go back to our request body. So far for our request body, this is the only variation we have. All right. And like I said in our previous class, that this variation is being carried out in what by Pydantic, right? So Pydantic is the one actually carrying out this variation for us. And so far we've only specified just type, all right, just types. Which of course, if we try to access our make a post request of this, then what then this variation will actually take place. But in this case, it will only check for what for the type and nothing more or nothing else. But so assuming we also wanted to add additional variations apart from just type and this, then we can actually do that, right? But then remember, when it comes to these models, right, or to classes like this that inherits from base model, that should be done by what by Pydantic, right? So you can use Pydantic to do what to add additional validations, all right, to our expected JSON body. So, but what we have here from our last class is basically a type check, all right. So it just checks for the type and nothing more, and we can try that out. You just have to put on our postman, and then make a post request to this URL and see how that works. So while postman is coming up, we also have other parameters which we are also going to look at in this. We're also going to look at that here as well. We also have other parameters. Okay, so apart from the query and the path parameters alongside our request body, we also have other parameters such as the header parameter and the cookies, right? Which I believe that we've heard of these parameters before now. So we also look at how we can actually use these parameters, as well. Okay, so this was where we left off in our last class, and so I simply just make a post request down there. This is, let's see. Say that I could not send the requests. So let's be sure that our server is up and running. As it seems our server has freezed. You have to unfreeze it. Okay. So we simply need to just shut it down and then pull it back up again. And then we have to change this to non-props. So UV and up dashboard 8,000. 1990. Let's try 1990. Was 1990. dash dash reload. All right. So let's go ahead and fire up this request again. Oh, sorry. This should be small up. It should be small a, not capital A. All right, so we go back and let me make this request. All right, so that actually went through. So that was what we did in our last class. And like I said, so far, what we've done here is basically type validation. So it means that if I should come back to our password and then make this an integer, right? Which in in our in our classes, right? We've already specified that what the password should be a string. So it means that once we try to submit this, what happens is that it will check if each of those fields matches what the expected type, right? Matches the expected type, which in this case, if you try to submit this, then they should throw an error saying that what the password is expected to be what that its password should be what should be a string rather, not an integer. So if we send this again, what we get the expected error saying our password should be what should be a valid string. But then we have what we had a valid integer and not a valid string. So that was the only variation that we did with Pydantic in our last class. But similar to what we've done with query and path, we can also specify additional validation for these fields, for each of these fields, right? And we can do that, right? We can do that by simply assigning this, right? Assigning these people to a field function. So Pydantic has a function where similar to query and to path, it also has a function called field. And then this function is being used where we intend to do what add additional information to each field because each of these attributes here is considered as a field, all right? As a field in your response body. Okay, so we can do that by simply doing what importing that field function. So the field function is also lives in the same directory where you have your base model. So where you have from Pydantic import base model, we can also bring in field from that same directory. All right. So we can just simply put a comma there and just put field. So field is built in Pydantic, all right? So we invoke this function, and then within this function, we can specify additional validation, right? Additional validation. So to do that, we simply equate each of these fields, all right, to the function itself. So in this case, I equate it to what? To field. So I'll invoke this function, right? And then you could see that upon invoking this function, we have what? We also have time hints similar to what we saw when we invoked the query and path function. We saw what we saw type hint, and then this type hint tells us what that tells us all the parameters, right? All the arguments that this function can do or can carry. And then you as a programmer, you can do what you can choose from any of these parameters what that suits your need, right? That suits your need. So think that most of these parameters are the same with query and path, right? They are basically the same. They are almost the same, right? Just few changes in some of them. So we still have the max length, the mean length, the greater than, and the rest of them, right? So I can just simply copy that and just paste there. So I'll copy just the function, just the parenthesis itself, please, and not with the function name, right? So since the arguments are almost the same or are the same, I'll just simply copy that. So for this man, I'll copy max length and mean length. Okay, and I'll give that to field here. So for field, I'm basically saying that that name should be a minimum word of 3 characters, right? I also have a maximum word of 10 characters. And must also be what? A string, right? So I can do that. I can do the same for the rest of the fields, right? But I'll just do for name, and I also do for an integer field, which in this case was age. So I'm expecting that in order for you to sign up in our platform, that you must be of a minimum of 18 years. All right. So I'll just move this better than for now. So it must be a minimum of what of 18 years. So you mean that if I should put an age less than 18, that it will automatically bounce back. So you could say that with these few codes that we can handle most of the violations without necessarily being writing a lot of code. And please, this should be field, not query, please. And Pydantic has nothing to do with query, right? So please, this should be field. So please correct that, field. Right, so with that, we can add additional variation to our request body. Just that is that simple, right? It is that simple. So we can do that, and then we can go back, and then we try doing what? We try making some requests again. Right, so if let's start with the age. Probably let's reduce the age to maybe say 15 and see if that variation actually works. So if I reduce that to 15 and then make this request again, then it says, of course, the first one already itself has worked, saying that we've exceeded the max length of 10. Say your bus is too long. That's more than 10 characters, right? So you mean that is actually working. So even if save your bus is a string which passes that criteria, save your bus must also be of 10 characters, all right? Must also be of 10 characters. Right. So if I can simply just reduce this, I believe this should give me 10 characters or less. So if I send this now, then that actually did work. Oh, sorry, there is a bug somewhere. I don't know if we can see that bug. So our HD is actually working. We put in 15 and it's working. So this shouldn't be less than, but then it should be greater than. So it means that it should be greater than, please. This should be GE. Greater than. Sorry, greater than. Not, not the other way around. So if we go back again and then we make this request, then we should have what that age should be greater than what 18. Right. So we can see that with this, we don't even need to write much code, but then a lot of things are being done for us. So that I can simply just go back there and change that to what to 18 years of age. Then that should now go through. Sorry, greater than probably. So if we intended to, if we wanted 18 to be included, then this should be greater than or equals to, in this case, GE. All right. In this case, GE. So we go back again and then we make the request, then that actually goes through. Do you have question? We have question.
Please have a question.
All right.
Okay, when you typed in the password as string, why didn't it show why didn't it also convert to a string? The
Okay.
integer you type to a string, exactly.
Oh, me here. All right. Is that okay? So then the problem here is that, like I said, when it gets to variation with Pydantic, right? Pydantic handles that variation on its own. So in the case of Pydantic does not actually convert, right? It does not try to convert, right? So this variation here is not actually being handled with Python, right? So it's being handled with Pydantic, okay? It's being handled, so Pydantic handles for us. So that's why that did not actually convert. Right. So Pydantic does not actually convert. It did not convert. So does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other question? Any other question? Right. So basically, that is how we do what. That is how we 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 validate information that's coming into our APIs. All right. So that's how you validate information that is being sent to our route or to our endpoint. So you can add additional variation as you see fit, right? As you see fit. You can add these variations as you see fit or as you intend to. And that will still do what? That will still carry out that variation for you without you necessarily writing a lot of code. Without you necessarily writing a lot of code. All right, so we'll talk about two other parameters and then we'll wrap it up for for the class, and that will be the end of the class. So there are other parameters which we can do, which we can actually use to do what? To send information to our API. So one of them is the header parameter, and one of them is the cookie. And then what I would have, or what I want us to do is that after today's class, all right, take a look at when to use each of these parameters and what kind of information should be sent through these parameters. Did we get that? After the class, in your spare time, look at when to use these parameters and what kind of information should be sent through these parameters. So there are a lot of ways which we can send information. Yes, no problem. But then does that mean that every information should go through a specific parameter? Can I pass my username alongside my password in the query parameter? Can I send probably my authentication key through the path parameter? So this is what we should do. What we should actually look up, all right, after today's class, what kind of information or the appropriate parameter for each kind of information. So that way it helps us do what? To know when to use a specific parameter and when not to use a specific parameter. All right. All right. So now let's see how we can simply use the header and the cookies. All right. So let's start with header. All right. So assuming I have another endpoint, okay, and then this, I'll just copy this and re-edit it here. So assuming we have this other endpoint, and this endpoint says probably an endpoint that should give one to edit a post, edit post, right? And then this edit post, okay, I'm expecting this edit post to have a header parameter or should contain a parameter called header, right? Or should that I'm expecting this to do what? To contain a header parameter called authorization, right? Authorization. So it's similar to query, all right? It's similar to query. You know that for a query parameter like size here, right? So I'm expecting your URL to do what? To carry a query that is called what? Size, right? Same thing happens there. If I'm expecting a a a, a request to carry a header parameter called authorization, then then what I need to do is what is simply put in the name of that parameter, which in this case is what? Authorization. So if I'm expecting that in order for you to do what? To actually access this route, right? That I am expecting what? So in order, if I'm expecting you to do what? To do what? To actually access this URL or this endpoint, I'm expecting you to do what? That your request should carry a header parameter called authorization. Okay. So what happens is that first API will do what? We'll go to that request and then go to the header section. Now you remember your request comes with a lot of information. When you go to a browser and you type www.facebook.com and send, that request carries a lot of information within it. But for us, we're basically just typing an endpoint, but then we don't know that within this endpoint, there's a lot of information. Information probably like your current location, the request type, any other necessary information, right? So your request can carry so as many information as possible, right? One of them is that it can also carry what? A parameter called what? A header parameter. Okay, so now if I'm expecting in this case, if I'm expecting that, okay, so what happens is that fast API will simply check your request and then check for what? For a header parameter called what? Authorization. If it's there, then it will grant you that request. If it's not there, then it will deny you that request. But here in this case, right, in this case here, so I'll simply just print out this. So I'll simply just print out authorization. Okay, and then I will just say user for now. Right. So if in this case, right, if we leave this like this, what happens? If we leave this like this, what happens? But first API will automatically see this as what? It automatically sees this as query parameter. Right? It will automatically see this as query parameter. Now, what we can do is that we can also explicitly, because there is no way we can do what we can, okay, probably do type hints and be like, okay, this one here is a header parameter, all right? That was an error. So what we can do is that we can, similar to what we've done for the query and the rest of them. So we can simply we can explicitly let fast API know that this particular man, right, must be a header parameter. Okay. So how do we do that? We, similar to what we did here, all right? So similar to what we did here, but then this time around we won't be doing a passing variation if need be, right? If need be. But in this case, I'll leave it just the way it is, right? And then I will not pass in any variation, right? So I'll just say probably that this should be, or this is, or this should be what, this should be a string, or whatever it should be. But then if I leave it like this, it simply means that what, that authorization here is a query parameter, because this is it is us doing what, explicitly or forcefully making this man what to be what, a query parameter. So similar to how we have query path and body, right? We also have the header function and the rest of them. So in the same direction we have your path and your query, I can know what I can also have what, header, right? And I can just come back here and do what, and let fast API know that this man here should be what, should be header. For now, we've not specified any additional validation, but then we've explicitly let fast API know that this man here is what, is a header parameter. It means that it lives in your header section of your request, of your request, right? So that means that it lives there. So this is not a path, neither is it what, a query or a request body, but it is what, it is a header parameter. And then if you go to your browser, there's no way where you can do what, where you can specify header parameter, right? There's no way, right? So it means that if we then try to access this man, it is post, that this will throw an error. This will throw an error. So I'll go back to edit post, and this will throw an error for us because this man here is missing. Seems our server is down. Okay, let's see. All right, let's as usual down it and bring it back up again. Not good. All right. So let's bring this back up again. Okay, so I think, okay, so we use UV to change this to CMD. Change this to CMD command prompt. So this should be UV con main. This should be small app. Dashboard 9090 dash reload. All right, so going back, so this should be 9090 rather, not 7070. I think that was the problem. 9090. You see that we have what, the appropriate error, right? Saying that is missing authorization, being what, a header parameter. All right, being a header parameter. But at the moment, there's no way we can wrap that up here in our browser. But with Postman, we can do what, we can specify that. Or if we need to use JavaScript to send this request, or probably Python to send this request, then we can do what, we can specify authorization as headers, right? We can put that, and we can actually pass that to the request itself. But from here, it's quite difficult to do that from here, right? Or complicated, rather. Okay, so what we can do now is you can go to Postman and then do what? Make that request with Postman. This man keeps coming up. So make that request with Postman and paste this here. So I'll try it again one more time, and then we get what the appropriate error. Now you can see that within your Postman you have authorization. So we have authorization, we have headers, we have body script, and rest of them. So basically, you want to click on the header section. So this one, what you have marked here by Postman is sent by default, right? So you can actually uncheck them if you want. But what we want to do is we want to add to this header, right? To this header variables, what authorization. So we simply come here and provide what authorization. Authorization. So we simply just copy this one as it is, and now just put it down here. Right, and for now, we'll just say that authorization is probably our name, Save Embassy. Right, and that's simple. And then we can do what? We can now make this request again. And then that actually went through. Right, that actually went through. So that's where you also need to do what to specify your headers. And headers is useful. Trust me, this parameter is useful. Right, and when we move and when we move forward, we start using them. Right, so that's what I'm telling you. After this class, um, go on a research on your own. All right, and find out which of these parameters is used or is should or when to use them, and what kind of information do you want to send through them, right? And what kind of information do you want to send through these parameters? So that is how you can actually do what specify what a header parameter, right? And then that's how you can actually include it in your request using Postman. Okay, question before we look at the last parameter. Question.
Please, can you explain the header parameter again?
So the header parameter, right, is basically is similar to the rest of to the rest of other parameters that we've talked about. Okay, so it also another means of sending information about to the API itself. So like I said, yeah, our request comes with a lot of information. Okay, and there are also information that lives within the header of your request. I think most of some of the API that we use in our previous tasks. So you could say that some of those APIs, they have what we call they have headers, and then what they basically just pass those headers to that request. So um similar to the request and sorry, similar to the path and the query, there's also header, and it's actually used for sending information as well. Okay, it's actually used for sending information as well. But then if you also want to actually to specify that what that a specific UI or sorry a specific argument should be what a header argument, which in this case authorization, right? And then if we leave it authorization, if we remove this, all right, and leave authorization the way it is, okay, first API we simply think that authorization there is what is a query parameter. And what happens that it will go to your URL and be expecting this value to come after what your question sign, which in this case that's not what we want. And we can also say that this is what a path parameter, because it to go to your path and expect what a dynamic what value, and which is not still what we want. But then we want this to be in the header section of your request. Your request comes in sections. There's header sections, and header section can carry a lot of information about the request, right? Header, header section can carry a lot of information about a request. Okay, so there's some information that one needs to pass through the header section, right? There's some information that is appropriate, right? The appropriate channel to pass that information is in the header section of a request, right? Now this is where Fast API I've created room for this kind of parameters. And then we now say that in order to create a parameter that should expect information to come in the header section of your request, that we cannot just leave that parameter the way it is because it will be considered as what as a query parameter. But then what we could do is that we could also typecast it in a way that it will look as if we want to do what to specify additional variation, which we are not actually specifying at the moment. So how do we do that? We simply use the annotation library, all right, where we can do what specify that this is man here what should be of string, and also must be what of a header function, similar to what we did here, where we say that size must be an integer, and also must be a query parameter that should contain this other variation, which in this case the GT and the early variation. So same thing can also be done with the header. So we simply just specify that this man here should be a string and must belong to this header, a header parameter, which at the moment we have not specified any additional information. So we just invoke that header function, right, to let fast API know that this man here is a header parameter. Same way we did here, which let fast API know that this man here is a query parameter, right? Do you understand? So now once we invoke this like this, all right, so what happens is that once a request is made to this endpoint, fast API will do what? We'll go to the header section of that request and look for a key that matches this variable here, authorization, and then check if that key exists. Then it does what? It grants you access. But if it does not actually exist, then it bounces you back. All right, it bounces you back. Any other question? Any other question? Do you understand? Do
Yes,
you
I
understand?
understand. Yes, I understand.
All right. Okay. The person that asked the question is seems the person has left the call. All right.
No, sir. No, sir.
Oh, yeah. What? I believe you understand. All right. So that's for header parameter. All right. Now we can also specify other variations if we see need for. Okay, like greater than and the rest of those things. That's depending on the expected value that's coming in there. Then we can do we can pass the appropriate variations, right? So that if we come here and do what and remove these variations here, this thing here will still work, right? But this is like us explicitly telling fast API that this man here should be a query parameter, which we could have just done, which we could have just leave it like this, right? And fast API will still know, of course, that is a query parameter. But then doing this now simply means that we are explicit, that we are not telling it again that star, please, this one here must be what? Query parameter. So same thing happens here. So we are explicitly saying that this man here must be what? Header parameter. So when a request is being made, right, fast API goes to the header section of your request, right? In your spare time too, you can also look up um, request, right? So every HTTP request contains a lot of information and a lot of sections, right? So there are headers, there are body as well, right? There are a lot of information that comes with a request, right? Then or probably in maybe make a request with Python and then just print out that request. Then maybe you could see a lot of information that stays within that request, right? So these things are just things that happens in web development world, all right? So these things just happens, they're just there, okay? So you can only utilize them, all right? They're already there, just utilize them, okay? So we also have what we call cookie, and I believe that we've heard of cookies. You go to a platform and they tell you that you should allow what cookies, right? Like I said, in your spare time, also look at what data should be passed in this particular route, right? So far we are going to cover about 5 different parameters. Take them down one by one and look at the appropriate data that should be sent through this route. so that we don't end up sending sensitive information in path parameter. So imagine me sending my, like, putting my password in my URL. It doesn't really, make sense, right? So let's see how you can also do for cookie. So cookie here is it's similar to what we've done with the header, right? So we just simply say that that for every request that's being made, that I expect that request to carry a cookie file or a cookie that has the name. Maybe we could look at probably we could look at state, right? A cookie that has a state. So your company, I call it state, right? And I'm expecting that this route should do what? So this route should probably go to, let's say, a route that does not exist. Profile dash me. I don't think that route exists in our list of routes. Okay, so probably when someone navigates to profile dash me, I expect that request to have a cookie that has what? That has a key or state. But as it is now, this still remains as a header parameter. So, excuse me, we can change that by also explicitly letting fast API know that this one here must be a cookie parameter. So we can do that by also importing that similar to in the same directory where we have our path and query and header. We can also import cookie. That's it. That is that. And then we come here and do what? We explicitly let path API know that this man here is what is cookie. Is cookie parameter. So this should be cookie rather. Cookie, right? And with that now, we basically let fast API know that this route, that any request that is made to this route, we want to check if it has a cookie that has a state in that cookie, right? So like I said, your request has a lot of information, cookie, headers, body, a lot of them, request type, probably IP address, and rest of them. They all live within your request, one single request. So you can do what? We can just utilize these things. Okay, we can utilize these things. Please, I'm urging us. Take each of these parameters and look it up, which appropriate data should be sent through these channels. It is important that you know these things so that you don't end up sending sensitive information in the wrong channel. That would not make a lot of sense. If someone can lay hands on it, then you can actually do what? Damage your application or rig your account or whatsoever. Okay, please in your spare time, look at that. Right, look at that. It will help a lot. Okay, so doing that, having that in place. So as usual, we can't, there's no way we can specify cookie with our browser. So that is quite difficult for us to do with our browser, or complicated. So if I try to do this, then this will turn an error, right? Saying that we're expecting a cookie, and that cookie should be what state. But so far, this request does not have it. As such, we cannot allow you to do what? To view this endpoint. So for you to view this endpoint, you must specify a cookie, right, state, right, in order for us to do what? To allow you view this map. So you can still specify that with of course with a request. If you can make a request with Python and then specify cookies in that request, right? But then with Postman, we can still do this as well. Okay, we can still do this as well. So we all go to Postman. So I'll copy this URL, go back to Postman, and then I'll show you how we can specify cookie in Postman. So I'll make a new request and I'll paste my request there. And then of course we know that if we send this, then this tells us that is missing, cookie is missing there. So now if we look at our Postman again, we're in the same section on the same line where we have authorization and headers and rest of them. Your right hand side, we have cookies, right? Now if you click on those cookies, we can do what? We can specify cookies for a specific domain. Remember, cookie is domain specific, right? It's domain specific. So I can just simply copy this URL here, and then come here and say manage cookies. So I can just add new domain if I want, but I'll just delete this off completely. So I can come here and then specify as in this URL. I want to add this URL, and then that for that particular URL, I'm expecting to have a cookie. So I'll call this cookie states in this case. And this states could probably carry new user as states, and then save. So cookie is just like that, and you're done. So you just go back again and make your request, and that should now go through as what new user, right? So that actually went through, right? So it's quite funny how it's being done with Postman, but then if you are doing this programmatically, right? If you are programming this, it makes a lot of sense, okay? Because you can just put this in dictionaries and wrap it up and send it and bundle it and send it as request all at once, all right? So it makes sense when doing it programmatically, okay? It makes a lot of sense. All right, so a question before we proceed again. Question. Question. No question. No question. No question. All right. So the silence means no question. All right. So we wrap it up there for today. Wrap it up there for today's class, and we'll meet again on Monday. But before I close for today's class, please and please and please, I am the one begging us now. Do your tasks. All right. So we are getting close towards the end of the boot camp. And I think in a few weeks' times, our teaching will end, and you have a month to work as a team with other people, right? To come up with a wonderful software solution. Now, it will be painful that you've come this far and then you can actually have the ability or the access to do what to be among one of the team that will build something innovative, all right, something wonderful, all right. So it will be very painful that you've been with us since day one and you've been up to this moment, but then at the end of it, or you don't have the access to do what to actually have a real world working scenario where you are being sent, where you are being matched with other team members, and then you work collaboratively. It's very painful. Apart from that, it's not also be nice that you've come this far and end up not getting certifications. Now, what are the possible things that will make you to miss these two things? One, the one and only important thing is that you've not done your tax. And so far we've given you guys grace, a lot of grace where you can actually submit tax at even when a tax is due. Please know it and know it now that when the very last tax is posted, let me say it again. When the very last tax, that the very last tax, the one and the overall tax for a bootcamp is being posted and the deadline is being specified. When that deadline passes, please and please, we cannot grade you. Me personally, I will not grade you again. Right. We cannot grade you again. So it means that we only grade those that have completed, because in order for it to even do the final task, it means that you must have completed the other task. So you can't even see the final task when you've not even done the rest of the when you've not even done the previous task. So it means that people that will participate in that project are people that they've done their tasks and and they are ready, like they are available to receive the final task. Now, when that final task drops, right? So even if you've done the rest of the task and then the final task dropped and then you've seen it, and then you've also not submitted that final task on time, it's just as if I'll count you among those that have not even done the old task. Because that's what will happen. So the moment the deadline for that final task passes or comes to an end, any other task that come after that we cannot grade, and those are the only people that will migrate to the final phase, where they get to work in teams and build something innovative, and at the end of it all, do what, get the certification and call it a day with the boot camp. So please and please and please and please and please, and the one begging us now. uh, and they want to begin us now, so that we now come tomorrow and start beginning me. All right, so please let's do our tax, all right, and let's do it on time. Dedicate time, and if you have existing time, if you have an existing tax, dedicate time. 2 hours of your time, a maximum you take to do a tax is 2, 3, 4 hours. You are done. Right? Just even if you want to dedicate 1 hour per day, you will complete those tasks and be on the current level that everybody is. Right? So that once the final task come, you see it almost immediately, and then you do what you submit it before the deadline, before the deadline. Okay, and then get to move to the final round of it all. Trust me, the final round is always very fantastic. Right? It's always very fantastic. So I don't know if there's any question pertaining to that. Right? Let's trash it out now and then call it a day. Any question? Any question? No question. So that means we all clear.
Question.
Right, what's the question?
Can you come again on how to add the cookie?
How to do what?
How to add the cookie?
Okay, how to add cookie file. Okay. All right. So to add cookie, we simply go to Postman, like I said. So now this is the route. Okay, this is the URL, or should I say, this is the endpoint that requires that this endpoint must have what, a cookie, right? So what you basically do is you copy that endpoint and then go to the cookie section at your right corner and at the right hand side. Click on it, and then you see where it tells you to add domain. So I've already added this domain, so I can just let me just lay this out. So to add domain, you simply just type that domain or that URL that expects what, a cookie. So in this case, it is this URL that expects that cookie. So I add that URL. And then for this URL now, you can know what, you can add cookies for that specific URL. So if there are 3, 4, 5 cookies expected in this URL, you simply just add them by clicking add cookie. So when you click on add cookie, you have a pop-up like this. Basically, what you want to do is you want to edit the cookie here, right? And add the value. The path and the rest of them, you have no concern with you. You delete just once. You basically want to do what, to edit your cookie and the value. So in this case, our cookie name here is what is states, and the value that we want here is new user, and then just save. That's that, and then close this, and then go ahead and make your request again. And that actually does went through, right? That actually works. Any other question? Any other question? Any other question? All right, so the silence means no other question. We all understood the task at hand. We all understood the assignment. Okay, please do your task. Try as much as you can to be on the current stage that we are now. Be there, right? So that you won't be at my end and now I'll be on your end. Where you now be begging me. I'm also be I'll miss my mic and also be looking at you. Right? So that will not happen. Please, let's be on the same stage as every other people. All right, it's always very painful. Very annoying. Right. Very annoying. All right, so all right, guys. So in the absence of any other thing, okay, so we can call it off for today. And I'll see you guys on Monday. Please do have a wonderful weekend ahead. And see you guys. Bye for now.